Thank you so much. That was way too kind. Now I'm already going to cry. See, this is what happens when you turn 50. But when we met Mark and Trifina, it's true. There was an instant chemistry and an instant respect, and they are awesome, awesome people. They're the real deal. They've just stepped into the leadership role here at Lakeside just seamlessly. And they've shared their gifts, their time, their resources, all those things. They've just led the way, and we're so grateful to have them with us. Yeah, for sure. We were hanging out last Sunday after church like we do sometimes, and you know, they're just, they're doing all this leadership stuff and speaking and leading and doing all this stuff. And at the same time, they're leading a young family and raising a young family and 2 individuals. And some of you know what that's like and how much work that is. And so they're just saying, oh yeah, last night, you know, we were up all night. Little Kaya, you know, she ingested some toxic stuff. We are on the phone to sick kids and poison control and up all night with her, like stomach aches and retching. And, you know, still he shows up here last Sunday morning to give the sermon. So that speaks to the kind of people they are and the kind of character and resolve they have to keep doing what we're trying to do here, which is to be a community to discover and follow Jesus. Well, today I get to talk to you. So surprise, you inadvertently stepped into what could be the biggest counseling session ever. So I sort of did the math and I thought, you know, we have usually about 700 people on a Sunday, and I did the math and I figured it would take me 28 weeks to see each of you individually. So this is actually a very efficient use of my time. So I'm sorry for you, but that's what we're going to do today. So just pretend that it's you and me. We're just talking. We're just having a conversation, just intimate, just, you know, tune everybody else out for this next, you know what, it's going to be 25 minutes or so. A little aside, counselors get paid by the hour. So we're paid to be succinct and get to the point. Very different than pastors, right? They have one point, they stretch it out, you know, stretch it out. Okay, so I had to work at making my talk like half an hour. I'm like, maybe I could add this, maybe I could add that. So I'm going to try to stretch it out to half an hour this morning. But yeah, that's what we're going to do. There's a lot of mystique about, apparently, it's not a mystique or mystery to me, obviously, but a lot of mystique and mystery about what happens in a counseling room. So what happens is that people sign up to come in and they, of their own free volition, if you can believe it, and they sign up, they come and talk, and they get to talk about whatever they want for an entire hour, and someone listens to them. The person's compassionate, empathic, they don't judge them. It's actually a really, really nice experience. It's awesome, people love it. It's awesome. We're not gonna do any of that today. No, that's not gonna happen. I'm gonna be doing all of the talking. I'm gonna break every single therapy rule there is to do, so please don't call my college, my professional college. Don't tell them what I'm doing today. I'm going to reveal some personal things, which number 1 is really against therapy and therapy school, and number 2, I hate doing. So big shout out to Brian, because I said I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable today. This is my little baby steps for me. So he's rooting for me. And wait for it, it's not going to cost you anything. Okay? Yeah. So it's on the house today, so you can thank the leadership at Lakeside for that. Well, as you know, we've been doing a series on mental health called Broken, and Mark started it off by saying, you know, it's okay to not be okay. And the statistics are about 1 in 5 people deal with clinical issues related to mental health, but we know the number is far bigger than that. Those are the people that go and they get help and they have a clinical diagnosis. So it's actually staggering. It's about 1 in 3 people have anxiety, 1 in 4, 1 in 6 depression, and then relationship issues. And that doesn't even cover like all of the stuff that you know, we deal with stress and anxieties and things like that on a normal day. So it's very common, and it's okay as Christians to not be okay. And then the second week, he talked about feelings. And he talked about how it is to pay attention. We need to pay attention to our feelings, and we need to take the information, we need to listen to them, and we need to lean into them, even if it's uncomfortable, and get the information we need so that we can act appropriately and make some good choices in our life. And then the next week he talked about we find ourselves in situations where we have behaviors, we do certain things, and sometimes it can reveal certain problematic beliefs that we have or lies that we're believing that lead us to do things that aren't good for us and maybe even aren't good for other people. And so he talked about transforming our minds to line up with biblical truths so we could be transformed and identify the truths to live by, to be healthy. So today, I'm going to talk about something that we don't talk about a lot, and there's probably a reason for that. It's a little bit of a tricky topic. I'm going to talk about shame. I've been doing this, as Mark said, for over 20 years. Again, I did a little calculation. I've done about probably 25,000 hours of coaching and counseling in my career so far. And, not one time has someone come to me and said, I have an issue about shame. Shame is like the instigator behind a lot of the issues that we deal with. When we get stuck in our anxiety, when we get stuck in depression, when we get stuck in addiction cycles, low self-esteem, all those kinds of, relational conflict, all that kind of stuff, it's usually fueled by shame, or shame has some part in keeping all of that going. Shame is dirty. It's subversive, and it doesn't play fair. So today I want to unpack that a little bit so that you can recognize when shame is at work in your life. You can recognize the dirty tricks it plays so that you can get the upper hand on shame and do something different with a different outcome in your life. And then next week, Mark's going to be back again. He's going to talk about some really pragmatic things we can do to keep our mental health well and get up close and personal with some real pragmatic solutions. So we look forward to that next week. I have a confession. I'm afraid of people judging me. I grew up in a family where we criticized things a lot in a sort of critical and analytical way. And it really did help me to develop analytical, strategic thinking, but it also invited me to be critical of myself and of others. I really don't like to talk about my feelings. I don't like to share. I don't like to be vulnerable, like what I'm doing right now. I don't like that. At times I feel inadequate. I have insecurities. I wonder and worry if people will like me. I can be a perfectionist and have high standards, judge myself and judge others who don't live up to those high standards. And I can worry about all kinds of stuff. Can you believe that? Like, I'm a therapist. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've read all the books. I've listened to Brene Brown. I've listened to people speak. I don't know. I've listened to probably a bazillion sermons in my life. I have a few degrees and certificates. I don't even want to tell you the dollar value attached to my education. I do this for a living. How can it be that I struggle with messages like that? Well, the truth is, we all have trash in our heads. All these kinds of critical self-judgment thoughts are things are things that are fueled by shame. As I said, it's dirty, it's subversive. There's a good news, bad news story about shame. We all have some level of shame in our lives, except psychopaths. So that's the good news, bad news. I don't know what else to tell you about that. Well, there's lots of causes about shame. And to be honest, that's the part that, you go to counseling for, you unpack that, you figure out what the causes are, and that's sort of for the counseling office, or to do one-on-one with someone else that you trust. We won't get into all of that today. But I do want to get into what shame is. So first of all, we're just going to look at this, and we're going to talk about shame and look at the definition. There's something wrong with me. Shame says there's something wrong with me. We've heard sometimes the distinction between guilt, I've done something wrong, and shame, there's something wrong with me. When we have shame-based thoughts, they tell us that there's something inherently wrong with us. We feel bad about ourselves, and it comes out in how we act. One of the problematic things about that is that it doesn't give us room to change. Remember how I said it's dirty and subversive? Think about that. If there's something wrong with us, what are we going to do about that? I can't do anything about that. If I've done something wrong, I can address that, I can change that. When I have shame and I believe that there's something inherently wrong with me, I get stuck. And that's what I was saying about people who come and see me who are stuck in anxiety, in depression, in low self-esteem, in addictive behaviors, in relational conflict. So I want to talk about a biblical story that many of us, even if you haven't come to church, many of us have heard of the story of Adam and Eve. Well, Adam and Eve had an amazing relationship with God. I mean, God created like a whole Garden of Eden to live in. Sounds like a really nice place, actually. I'd like to get a condo there. But God actually made Adam in his own image. There was a harmonious relationship. And then with Eve, he gives them freedom in the garden. They're able to do whatever they want. They have a relationship with God that's pure, that's harmonious. And they have one rule to follow. And the rule is they can't eat from the tree of knowledge. That's it. One rule. So guess what happens? We kind of know the story. Eve eats from the fruit of the tree of knowledge, offers it to her husband, as any woman would, right? Like, I mean, apparently we're supposed to make dinner. It's an apple tonight. And immediately, they're filled with shame. So what happens? So the first point that I want to talk about is shame tells us to hide. Shame tells us to hide. So, like I said, they have God and Adam and Eve have this harmonious, close relationship. God comes to find them one day to hang out, and they're hiding. And what do? They hide parts of their body, first of all. Right? Anybody who's had any body image issues, we wear sweaters, we, pull out our shirts, we, cover up. That's what shame says. It says hide. Hide your body. Hide parts of your body. But we can also hide in more sort of intangible ways. We hide parts of ourselves. We keep secrets. We withdraw. Have you ever noticed that pattern in your life? When you've done something wrong, you withdraw from other people, you keep secrets, you hide stuff. Jeff and I are really serious about our coffee in the morning. Like, I mean, really, really serious. Jeff, he's an amazing guy. He gets up and he makes me coffee every day. Yeah, I know. It's a simple thing, but honestly, it keeps us together. He gets the beans out, he grinds it, he doesn't measure it, I measure it. Okay, but we're dealing with that. And we each get equal cups of coffee. So we have the same size mugs, except Trifina bought me one mug that is my favorite mug, and it's a little bit bigger. But other than that little one mug, we have all similar mugs, so we get the same amount. And then there's a little bit left in the bottom, which we split evenly again. And if on some morning one of us is a little bit more tired or we're having a tough morning, we might steal a little bit of extra coffee. And when the other person goes to get their second little bit and it's gone, it's like, what is going on? And the other person is sort of sheepish, kind of hiding. But the truth is we do way worse things than that. And it comes between our relationships. We hide, we keep secrets, we withdraw. Well, as if that hiding isn't bad enough and now the relationship's broken, when God is looking for them, he asked them if they've eaten from the tree. And guess what they said? It's his fault. Eve blames the serpent. Adam blames Eve. And we're full on into the blame game. And we all know how that works, right? So that's point number 2. Shame tells us to blame. We don't want to take responsibility. We deflect, we point fingers, we tell other people, we say it's their fault. What could I have done? Well, we know that Adam and Eve, they were ashamed of what they had done. They did the one thing they weren't supposed to do. They felt ashamed. We can see by their behavior of hiding that they were ashamed. They could have owned up to it and made it right. But they hid and they blamed other people for their choices. So just a little bit of a commercial break. I'm going to put my counselor hat on for a minute. If Adam and Eve had come to me for counseling, their story could have turned out very differently. I would have told them and talked to them about understanding how they got here, why they maybe made those choices, what factored into making those choices. So that's empathy and understanding, which is, by the way, the antidote to shame. Empathy and understanding, how you got here, how you made those choices, the antidote to shame, and responsibility. Even though we can understand why we might have done something, we're still responsible for it. And then there's an invitation to responsibility. Well, as old as I am, Adam and Eve were before my time. But if they were able to, for a moment, suspend judgment of themselves, to suspend the shame, they could have thought to themselves, oh boy, right? We've all felt it before, that feeling in the pit of your stomach, oh boy, I've made a big mistake. They could have approached God and made it right. They could have restored the relationship. They could have taken responsibility. They could have made amends. But they didn't. They hid, and then they blamed. They blew up their perfect, harmonious relationship with God and each other. And as the story goes, they were kicked out of the garden, and there were some pretty significant ramifications to their choices, for them and for us, even today. So let's look at the number 3 point I want to talk to you about today. Shame aggressively attacks our connection with each other. Shame aggressively attacks our connection with each other. So I'm going to keep my counselor hat on for a little bit. And just to understand how this works in terms of this this idea about shame aggressively attacking our connection with each other, I think it's important to understand that human beings have two core needs. One is to be loved, and one is to have a purpose. We know that we want to be loved. We crave relationship and intimacy. I mean, it's what keeps the world going round, right? We know it intuitively. There's something that draws us to connect with other people. We crave intimacy, for others to know us. I'm going to give a shout out to, my age group here. Who here remembers sometimes I want to go where everybody knows my name? Okay, right? Cheers. Yeah, I like it. So two things. One, we really do want people to know us. And two, now you know why I'm not on the worship team. If there was ever a question in your mind about that, we've just clarified that. But we also crave meaning and purpose. We want to know that our life matters and that we're doing something purposeful to make a difference in the world. So how this plays out and why this is important is we'll come over here, and the whole love piece, the whole core need of being loved is about relationship. The other piece is about responsibility, doing something significant, having a purpose. The truth is we're each wired for one more than the other. Some people are wired more towards relationship, and some people more towards responsibility. The relationship people are, I want to be loved, let's connect, let's hang out, let's have coffee, let's have a men's breakfast. Gary Johnson, shout out to Gary, right? They want to be loved. They want to connect. Responsibility people are about significance. They're about doing stuff. They're about a list of to-dos and tasks, things to get done. You can tell those people because they're always busy. They always have stuff to do. They have lots of projects, lists and lists of things that they want to do. The interesting thing is that relationship people often hang out with each other, and responsibility people often hang out with each other. Now, you'll know these two themes if you've read the books or watched the videos, Love and Respect. All those books and things like that are built on research that talks about this. The challenge is with Love and Respect, they connect it to gender. That women are always about relationship and men are always about responsibility. And the research shows us that it's actually more like a 75-25 split. So while it's true that most women are more about relationship, there is a group of women who are, maybe about 25% are about responsibility, and then the reverse is flipped. So 75% of men are about responsibility first and relationship second. Now, I'm not exactly sure why this is, but I think I have a hunch. In over 20 years, every couple I've ever seen in therapy, one of them is about relationship and one of them is about responsibility. There's one of each in every partnership that I've seen. So I'm going to give you an example of how the pattern goes between these two people. And if you've been in relationship, if you're married, you know how this goes. In the spirit of confidentiality, I've changed the names so no one will know who this is. The relationship person says, I just don't feel like a priority. Jeff works all the time. He travels, and then when he's home, he's exhausted. He's not emotionally present. You know, it's a therapist who's saying this to the therapist, right? I take care of the kids. I take care of the house. I get groceries. I make the food. He doesn't appreciate me. He takes it for granted. And then Jeff says, I don't know, responsibility. I don't know what more I can do. I come home. You know, I do whatever you want me to do, which is true. I take care of the kids. He used to. And so the pattern goes. And you'll notice with the way to figure out who the relationship person is in your own relationship is pay attention to the language. Who is the person that's saying, let's connect more, let's turn off the TV, let's plan a dinner, let's go out, let's connect, we need to, pray more, we need to spend more time together, we're too busy. And the responsibility person is like, oh, I got to get to that thing, and I got to fix this, and I got to fix that. Sometimes oblivious to the fact that the partner is needing to connect. Well, the problem is, while this is a normal thing that happens in a relationship, if shame gets in there, and remember, shame tells us there's something inherently wrong with us. So it gets dirty, it gets subversive. Shame messages are fueling this from behind. We have a situation that can't change. So what needs to happen for this pattern to change is that each person needs to be vulnerable. Each person needs to open up and say what they need, starting with the person who is the relationship person. I need to connect. I need more time with you. I don't feel like a priority, rather than the shame, blame, which we all are probably familiar with. And for you responsibility people out there, I'm going to tell you how to save your marriage. You listen, and you do it. Again, it doesn't sound hard. But what happens often in marriages, and when people come and see me, they're stuck in a pattern where the relationship person is dying, and there's just saying, like, I need to connect, I need intimacy, I need relationship. And the other person who's about responsibility is working and working and working and doing and doing and doing. And not realizing that really what they need to do is just to slow down and take some time, spend some relationship time, make it a priority. And in that way, just put a bullet to shame. So if you see this pattern, this will save your relationship. If you see this pattern happening, step out of those messages of shame that fuel the pattern. And connect. Put relationship first. Make it a priority. Take time. Connect, connect, connect. Well, I'm going to give you another example in the Bible where there was a person who made a bad choice and blew up the relationship between him and God. I'm thinking of the story of Peter. You know, we often think that people in the Bible are heroes, they're perfect, and We can never, never aspire to them. When you look at Peter, he starts off great. Starts off to be that kind of story. In Luke chapter 5, which is one of the Gospels at the beginning of the Newer Testament, Peter comes into the scene, and Peter was Jesus' first disciple. Jesus met him when he was fishing. He was catching nothing, and Jesus told him, "Put your net on the other side of the boat." And when Peter did that, he hauled in this huge amount of fish. And Jesus said, stop fishing. I'm gonna make you a fisher of men. Another time, Peter saw Jesus, and Peter actually walked on water. Okay? That's above my pay grade. Like I've done a lot of stuff, but I haven't walked on water yet. But who knows? He saw Jesus make his triumphant entrance into Jerusalem, where people were crying out and worshiping him. He saw miracles. He saw people raised from the dead. Peter was a passionate follower of Jesus. Even the night that Jesus was arrested, Peter was passionately defending him. He actually took his sword and cut off the ear of one of the soldiers who was trying to arrest Jesus. I mean, he was protecting his relationship with Jesus. After Jesus was arrested, however, Peter makes a bad choice. We're going to look at this scripture verse here, Luke 22. Then seizing him, they led him away and took him in the house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance. And when some there had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat with them. A servant girl saw him seated there in the firelight. She looked closely at him and said, "This man was with him." But he denied it. Betrayal. That's one of the most powerful feelings we can have. But he denied it. "Woman, I don't know him," he said. A little later, someone else with him and said, "You also are one of them." "Man, I am not." About an hour later, another asserted, "Certainly this fellow was with him, for he is a Galilean." And Peter replied, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." Jesus, as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. So 3 times, people called Peter out as a follower of Jesus, as a friend of Jesus. He betrays the friendship. He betrays the relationship and says, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know him. He goes from up here, first disciple, walking on water, to down here. Rock bottom. Blows up the relationship. Failure with a capital F. So what does he do? He hides. He withdraws. He goes back to fishing. He goes back to his old way of living that he did before he met Jesus. Do you ever notice when we feel bad about ourselves? Shame, self-judgment, something inherently wrong with us. We go back to our old ways. There's a proverb, I don't know if you've ever read it, Proverbs 26:11. It's pretty graphic, so brace yourself. As a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool repeats his folly. Isn't that disgusting? As a dog returns to its vomit, but that's what we do. We go back to our old ways. We go back to our comfortable but destructive ways of behavior. Drinking, drugs, pornography, sex, retail therapy, eating, purging, cutting, self-harm, rage, violence, abuse, work. I'm imagining that Peter's feeling pretty bad about now. He's probably feeling pretty bad about himself. But what does Jesus do? Jesus, who was in the best position to judge him, to cast aspersions on him, to criticize him, to demean him. Jesus actually takes the initiative and seeks Peter out. He sees him fishing. It's like, oh my gosh. All that time I spent with him, all the things we talked about, all the things we did. He walked on water. He saw people raised from the dead. And Jesus says, he calls out to Peter and he seeks him out. He takes the initiative. He tracks him down. And he tells them again, while they're fishing and catching absolutely nothing, put your nets on the other side. And the nets fill with fish. Again. And that's how Peter recognizes it's Jesus standing on the shore, waiting for him to restore relationship. It's an amazing, amazing picture. Jesus calls to him and says, hey guys, come on in, including Peter. Let me make you breakfast. Jesus didn't need breakfast. He had died and rose again. He had his new body. He didn't need to eat. But he made breakfast. So not only did he seek Peter out, not only does he not demean him and call him out for his bad choice and make him feel worse than he probably already felt, he makes him breakfast. He serves him. And then this is the conversation that plays out between the two of them. Don't you wish you were there? Amazing. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of God, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. So remember, do you love me? First, relationship. Feed my lambs. Second, responsibility. Significance, purpose. Again, Jesus says, Simon, son of John, do you love me? You know, Jesus is really making sure that Peter is understanding his own identity, relationship. Do you love me? Peter says, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And Jesus says, take care of my sheep, responsibility. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time. It's like, oh my gosh, yes. Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. You know, I can't help but think if this had have happened today in our current modern era, you know, I feel like Jesus could have sent Peter like a really angry text message. You made a mistake. I'm going to make you pay. I'll never trust you again. You don't deserve another chance. I'm not doing anything for you ever again. He doesn't do any of those things. Instead, Jesus seeks Peter out and corrects Peter's thinking about himself. He gets Peter to remember and say out loud to himself, I love you. It's not for Jesus. He's getting Peter to recognize who he is, what his identity is. And out of his identity, out of a relationship, then the responsibility. I've probably heard a bazillion sermons in my life. I don't know. I've been a Christian since I was 7 years old. Back in the day when we used to go to church twice on Sundays and then Wednesday nights as well. And you know what? Along with some of you who have maybe grown up around the church and had these messages of Jesus telling us and God telling us it's relationship first, we get it mixed up in our heads. You know, we think we have to work our way into God's favor instead of accepting the relationship. If you're new to all of this stuff about the faith and the Bible and some of the stories that we talked about today, you know, what I want you to know is that you don't have to clean your act up to come to Jesus. Jesus is at the shore. He's here waiting for you to come. Jesus has open arms. He's not waiting for you to change your life and clean your act up and get everything all in order. He's just saying, come. So I'm going to invite the band up, and as they come up, I'm going to read some verses to remind all of us what our relationship with God is based on, what God says to us about our identity. And if you would just feel comfortable to close your eyes and just receive these truths into your life. From Zephaniah 3, the Lord your God is with you. He is mighty to save. He will take great delight in you. He will quiet you with his love. He will rejoice over you with singing. You know, I just picture God just looking over you and seeing all that you are and all that you've done, and he's taking great delight. He's singing. What a beautiful picture. In Jeremiah 1, 4-5, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Jesus formed you and knit you exactly as you are. There's no mistakes. You don't have too much of this or too little of that. He made you exactly as you are, every part of you. And from 1 Corinthians, the person who loves God is known by him. 1 Peter 5:7, cast all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. You know, worry and stress, that's the biggest thing that we deal with in life. Just cast your cares and your anxieties on him. He cares for you. He knows what's going on in your life, and he cares. And from 1 John 4:9, this is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. This is love, not that we loved God, but that God loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. God made sure that we could have a relationship with him. Not because we're good, not because we do the right things, but because he loves us. He made a way for us to come into relationship with him. So I don't know what those trash messages are in your head, what the specific ones are. Some of them that I'm familiar with, I'm a bother to people. I'm an annoyance. I'm not good enough. Why is it always me? Why is it always me doing something bad or wrong? I've done something unforgivable. If you knew what I'd done, if you only knew. Jesus knows. It's no surprise to him. The should messages. I should be a better mother, father, sister, brother, son, or daughter. I should. I'm ashamed of some of the things I've done. No one will ever love me. I'm bad. I'm an embarrassment. I was a mistake. Those are not true. Those are lies. And today, I'm going to invite you to take those lies and give them to Jesus and accept his gift, accept his love, accept a relationship with him. He's inviting you to come. And you're perfect just the way you are. He's formed you. He's knit you together. God is waiting for you to come to him with open arms, to delight in you, to receive you, and to love you. So just come.
Thanks so much, Andrea. Would you stand? And I just want to give you a benediction before you head out. Mind you, our prayer teams are up at the front. I imagine that's stirred up a lot of things, and our prayer team is happy to pray through anything. And if you're in that place, you're like, I haven't even processed this yet. Literally just come up and be like, I need prayer. Go. They're good with that, okay? As you go, can I just say you're going to run into all sorts of situations this week in your life and in others where you are reminded and feel this idea of drawing back, hiding, blaming. May those just be reminders that we still live in a broken world, and may they remind you immediately of a loving God who does the opposite of what you're seeing, experiencing, and wanting to do. Go in Jesus' name. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week for the final part.